Get a long way every day.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'd like to call to order the Oconee County Planning Commission. It's June the 21st, 2021. First order is the invocation. David?
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we ask that you please watch over the committee and the planning staff and guide us in wise and safety-conscious decisions in support of the public. We also ask that you watch over the county law enforcement and first responders as they perform their duties, that they may return home safe to their families every shift. We ask that you please watch over the county and state leaders as they work to make the county and state a better place to live each day. And please bless all of us that we may have frugality and wisdom and tempered with compassion and empathy in the performance of our service to the community. In his name we pray. Amen.
Mike, you lead us in the pledge.
I will.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I'll sleep at the wheel.
Minutes, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Anybody? If there are none, can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any public comments? Anybody sign up? Anybody wants to make any public comments? Gee, okay. Ed, thank you. Come on up here and talk to us about the CAT bus.
This is the spot? Okay, well, thank you all for having me. My name is Ed Hallbig. I'm the planning director for the city of Seneca. And happy to be here to speak with you tonight about CAT bus. We have representatives from the city and from CAT bus here with us as well. You say speak to you about CAT bus, I can speak to you about public transportation in Oconee County. And CAT bus is the tool that we use to provide that. And we have been providing it since October of 2006, inside and outside the city of Seneca, Utica Mill area, the Walmart, the hospital, and of course everything between us and the city of Clemson, where we have sent buses to connect to Clemson University, Clemson, and other areas that CAT bus does serve and connect to, and we've been doing that now for 15 years. So we've done it with diesel buses. We've been doing it with electric buses now since 2014. We've been very fortunate to be able to take advantage of federal and state grants to operate the system. And basically, I think what I'm here for is to explain or help understand how CAT bus can expand, how the service of transit in Oconee County can expand. And I sent a memo to Vivian Klumpier and asked that to be distributed to y'all. And it kind of just gives you a brief history and where we're at. And quite honestly, we're looking for places where the people want us to bring the buses to them, and we're looking for communities that will be able to assist us in the financial efforts that we undertake to operate the bus. Currently, the city of Seneca does a local match for the buses of $145,674 for the coming year. We do that with a contribution of $60,000 from Oconee County. So the city of Seneca still is kind of carrying a larger portion of that. We see the benefit, but we are actually about 50% of the bus service, or 50% of the bus service is actually provided with inside the city. We do try to get people to Tri-County Tech. We would love to get people from other cities to Tri-County Tech. We'd love to get people from other cities to Clemson, to the hospital, to shopping at the Walmart area. All of these things, as we were speaking earlier, we said people will get to the places that they need to go. There's no doubt about that. It's just a matter of the difficulty that they have in getting there. We've always talked about what service to, say, this area would be like, and we figure one of the things that we'd end up doing is probably transporting prisoners, or the newly released, I should say, back to Seneca and the other, parts of the county. If the bus comes through here and somebody needs to ride on it, and they get on board and they're, behaving themselves, then they're gonna get to where they need to go. Otherwise, those folks are walking down 28 or, reaching out to other folks that they know that can provide them with that service. People will get to where they need to go. We are trying to facilitate that effort. Is there anything in specifics that I can certainly address? Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna ask you specifically about Walhalla again, you already mentioned it, but if, through your eyes, looking into the future, what has to happen to get service to Walhalla?
Well, we have to have the city of Walhalla saying that that's something that they'd like to see happen. And we'd
That's
also.
the easy part.
What's that? That actually hasn't been the easy part
okay.
up to this point.
Sorry to misrepresent.
But it is necessary. One of the things that we've dealt with for a number of years is this duality of Walhalla as both a city and a county seat. So the question is, why doesn't Seneca just bring a bus up here so that the citizens of that area can have access to the services that they need in this building, across the street, and with all of the government entities that are in this area, the courthouse, to name another. But we'd really like to make sure that when we did something like that, that there was a partnership, that there was an understanding that that this city wanted the bus and wanted to reciprocate with being able to have its population be able to come down to the services that Seneca provides. We do have a great relationship when it comes to Oktoberfest. The buses will come up here and they will serve that event, solving a number of transportation issues, making it easier for people to get around the city of Walhalla. And so there's always a request and a demand and a fulfillment of that demand, through us and through CatBus to provide that service to the city of Walhalla when it needs it. We'd just like to be able to expand on that and see if we can't, provide for services year round.
Could you speak to the financial side of that decision and trying to expand to Walhalla?
Well, so CatBus service generally costs us about $70 an hour, and it's a matter of frequency, how often, and essentially that kind of can dictate what type of service there can be. We've talked about as little as like 2 or 3 routes a day that would come up here morning, noon, and evening. We've talked about that with a number of mills as well, especially when we're talking about things like shift work. Now, we don't run buses currently past 6:30 in the evening, so we wouldn't be able to hit, say, a late second or third shift transition, but we do, look at those as options to try and figure out what makes the most economic sense. And one of the issues that we have is, nobody ever says there's too much bus service. So, doing it, once or twice a day may satisfy some folks. There's gonna be others that are saying we'll take more of it. Yes, yes, sir.
I've got several questions, but sticking with the Walhalla possible future route. Is the need in Walhalla for Walhalla, or is the need in counties, accessing county services, and they just happen to be in Walhalla?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a question for Walhalla to ask its citizens. We've done and participated and partnered with surveys on a number of occasions for the county, for the 3 cities, and there's always interest, and there's always some discussions of what could be, but there's never been kind of that actual. It's all a diagram, and there's no actual spark that gets anything going. So, ideally, the question that you're asking would be asked of the citizens of Walhalla and the leadership of Walhalla as well.
And right now, that has not been a request or conversation with you all?
I have had conversations with, a few interested parties. I know Councilperson Sarai Melendez had, was interested in being at this meeting. She's currently out of state, but there, and it was also an interest of Mr. Owens, before he had passed, that we start looking at these things, but that they still needed to have discussions within their political orbit to figure out what the direction of the county, of the city would be, and to that end, we haven't seen any action from the city council.
Couple of other questions then. How many buses do y'all have that in service at this point in time?
Linda, my assistant Barbara, we've got 9 buses and 8 buses, and in service at any one time, we've usually
We
got.
got 3 routes right now.
Right, okay. 3 routes now, and a 4th one in the fall when Tri-County Tech starts up. We have the 1 route that essentially runs on their schedule.
And is there a route that currently runs, I'm guessing back towards the Seneca area, that's an overtasked route that you are running full capacity loads, that there's a real high traffic time or high traffic route?
That one's a good question, and I don't know that I've got a perfect answer for that. I know that we've had to make modifications to our routes in the past, say 3 to 5 years, to actually be able to extend their time so that we could fully serve the areas that we were covering. And so we had to go from 30 minutes to hour routes in some locations, just to be able to provide as much service as we can with the number of drivers on the number of routes that we do have.
And I apologize for taking so much time. When we did our 2020 comprehensive plan, one of the things that came up was cat bus, more public transportation, and then the concern of traffic safety, where cat bus, especially like on 123, stops sporadically at different points. And the conversations started developing about, are there not places where we could designate as pickup or drop-off points? And then somewhere along the line, it was told to us that in order to create a pickup or drop-off point, you need access to that. In other words, a sidewalk to get there. And that's kind of where we circle back around to get to this conversation. Am I correct in that, or is that we picked that up somewhere and that's not true?
No, that's entirely true. we were talking earlier, we're still a rural community in the eyes of the Census Bureau, and as such, they, South Carolina Department of Transportation says that a system in which you hail a bus is appropriate for a rural system. We expect, of course, that that's going to change. I believe it will change with the coming census.
So is that a DOT-driven thing then, where DOT is saying we don't need it, so nobody needs to worry about it?
No, I've been a proponent of that for quite some time, at least to have places where the buses can pull out of traffic. And we can certainly look at things like that with designs of development along the major arteries, where something like that is actually incorporated into a new site plan design. So there are some places where, a bus can pull out. It does it, for instance, at like the Bilo Plaza. It's been doing that previously. We're trying to get to there again, where it pulls down onto the side street, actually serves the businesses there, and then pulls back out. So there's ideal designs for that.
Well, and the reason you're in front of us is, obviously, you're the planning director for Seneca, and a lot of that traffic is Seneca city limits that it's in currently, but as county representatives, we're looking at that future growth and future expansion, and where is that gonna be? And can we start laying the groundwork for a turnoff lane or a designated pickup point or something like that, knowing that, one, the census is gonna drive it at some point, and two, just the growth is gonna drive it. Is there a census number that puts us over the threshold?
There's a number of persons per square mile that does put us over the threshold, and also a minimum number of, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going back 20 years on this, a minimum population of 50,000 in and of itself, or you are adjacent to a larger urban area. City of Clemson came in 2010 as urban, and we've only seen more and more growth between us and them. So we imagined connectivity between us and Clemson with the coming census. We would essentially be an extension of their extension from 2010.
At a county level, and I can't speak for everybody, but at a county level, we are really focusing or watching that traffic increase down around the plaza down there, going from all the Clemson housing across the two bridges, and then people trying to get out of Seneca and diverting potentially down through Shiloh to cross lower to get to Anderson. And we're really going, okay, what does this growth look like, and where are things going to happen, and what can we do to help that? Please know that once it hits a county area and gets out of the city limits of Seneca, we would love to be involved in whatever you need from us. Again, I may be speaking out of turn, but it's sitting there in our comprehensive plan that we need to be aware of it. So, thanks.
I just got one. The county's already paying, what, 60, you said 60,000 a
That's
year?
correct.
How much more did they have to pay, or would they have to pay to get the bus to come to the county facility here?
Well, again, it's, we would like to be able to provide that service, but going back to that question of whether or not Walhalla wants bus service in the coming and going through the city of Walhalla would be the first question. Second, I'd say we'd probably want to try to at least get to something more equitable on a 50-50, percentage basis of local match between what the city is paying and what the county is paying. And we'd also just have to look at what those additional routes would cost. How many routes per day, how many days per week? As I said,
Clarify on that 50-50 match, is there also a percentage that would be paid through a grant? in that?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I'm talking only about the local
Yes.
side of it.
I just
So-
want to make sure I understood that.
Right. So for the operational side, and that is a bus on the road with a driver, there is a 50% of that is paid federal, 25% of that is paid state, and 25% of that is paid local. And with everything else, it's usually an 80-10-10, 80s federal, 10 state, 10 local. So for capital investments and administrative costs, the ratios are so much better. Again, some of that is going to be up in the air if we become an urban system, and we're still working on what, those numbers might look like, but we just don't know if we're going to, I expect we'll be urban, and so I'm planning for that as a planner.
David, you had a question.
I think I heard the other questions were adequate to answer mine.
I guess my take from this is that it's obviously going to take coordination from the leaders in Walhalla and the county to get together and see if they can come up with some kind of a plan. And then they work out the financial issues and whatever. Am I interpreting all that correctly?
Let me clarify that or question. If I'm putting you on the spot,
By all
don't feel
means.
like you have to answer. But am I hearing that there is current pushback from the city of Walhalla from a service standpoint?
I wouldn't call it so much pushback as basically disinterest. And to be honest, I'd put that in Westminster's, situation as well. We not
Sounds like a great
interested at
newspaper
this-
quote right there.
Does anybody else have any questions?
So the city, basically Seneca's got $70,000 involved, give or take a little money of your own money.
That's correct.
So do you feel like does a lot of that occurred through ATAX money, or how do you justify it? So if y'all willing to put $70,000 in it, you're seeing a benefit, or you think you are. So would traffic to Walhalla or traffic to Westminster back to Seneca, which is obviously the economic hub of the county, on the majority side of it, would it be a boon or a benefit to Seneca? Would it? I mean, could it?
I certainly understand what you're saying as far as whether or not, it would be a benefit to the city. And sometimes I have to use the term the city loosely because we understand what is, in our area. But
Yeah.
The Food Lion now, no longer Milo, the Food Lion and the Lowe's are not in the city.
Right.
Are not paying city taxes. The
Correct.
Walmart is not in the city, is not paying city taxes.
Gotcha.
The hospital, of course, is not in the city. So there are, and I can list all those restaurants down that road that are not in the city either. There will not be that much in the way of enriching the city's coffers by doing something like this. Ours is going to be more probably being able to serve, we're looking at, can it serve our citizens to be able to, visit Westminster for some things that they can't get in Seneca, or come up to Walhalla and, again, be able to seek county services.
So actually, it would work out better for Walhalla or Westminster. I mean, if you're looking at it from those terms, that Seneca people come to here to do their business, and yeah.
True, but, the other question is, if someone, leaves Walhalla to come down to Seneca to buy something there, are they, is it a loss of, for the city here? But at the same time, if there's a store here, something on Main Street that Seneca doesn't have, then there's opportunities now for those folks, for more people to reach those stores, reach those services. Yes, sir.
I got one other question. What do y'all have as safety to protect the citizens that ride these buses from whatever is out there? I mean, I've heard all kind of complaints about, it'll bring indigent people into my town. So what type of security is there on the bus to protect someone coming from Sunnyside? Say they come in here, want to pay their taxes, they got money or they whatever. How are y'all going to be able to protect them to make sure they don't get robbed on the way up here? I mean, is there security on the bus?
Well, there is a driver with a radio, and a radio can reach out to any law enforcement. The buses themselves are bristling with cameras, so there is the collection of any and all evidence that is useful both inside and outside the buses. Mr. Pearson, to your point, the best thing that we can have for that is having a lot of riders. So the more ridership we can get, the safer a bus becomes. As we've said, there's some folks that just don't want, too many witnesses. So, and we do let everyone know. I mean, you can see the cameras. You can see some of that on the monitors. There's notices within the bus.
You have them on the outside?
What's that?
You have them on the outside of the
On
bus?
the outside too, back, sides, front, driver's view. Very useful for whenever there's any sort of fender benders or worse. But it's also very handy for when a bus is stopped. You actually are getting a kind of a panoramic view of what's happening around at that bus stop.
Got one other, and this is just with what's going on in today's world, that everybody's fussing about the Second Amendment, your right to have a firearm. Do y'all stop people that are carrying a concealed weapon, or that as long as they don't, see it, you don't say anything, or what is the policy on that?
I would have to defer to Cat Bus on that one.
We don't allow it. If we don't see it, what can you do about it? That's, even in here, anybody can have one. If we don't see it, we don't know. But if it's present, we do not allow it. If it's out in the open, no, sir.
Well, they're
Because
not
that's
allowed.
a danger to everybody.
Right now, they're not allowed to carry it out in the open, so it would be
Right.
a concealed, it would be hid anyway, so I was just curious.
And most of the time with FTA rules and stuff, you step onto that, because FTA rules, you're not allowed to carry an open firearm on any bus legally.
Well, again, it's not speaking for everyone, but it is something in our comprehensive plan. It is something that the planning commission, whether it be through safety questions and concerns of our county residents, whether it's transportation and congestion issues with our county residents, whether it's simply public transportation and the need for more of it for our county residents, it is something that is in our comprehensive plan to address over the next 10 years. So please feel free to contact us anytime that we can provide some level of voice, if nothing else.
Anybody else have any questions? Anybody?
If I may, I just want to thank you all for opening up this dialogue. I think it is important just to be able to have these discussions with appointed officials that can talk to their elected officials as well, and hopefully help everybody understand what the benefits of public transportation can be.
Well, we thank you again for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
You can go
appreciate
on to
being
the
here.
next meeting.
On to the next one, yes, sir.
So the next item is commission member comments. Let me lead this off, just a couple of comments. Our next meeting is July the 8th. It's on a Thursday, not a Monday. On July the 19th, we tentatively have Kyle Reed scheduled to come in here to talk with us about Exit 4 and sidewalk issue. And one other thing we need to bring up that was, we need to be sure that when we're talking, that we not step over the other person and not interrupt each other, so that it's easier for the secretaries to keep up with it. And actually, we're supposed to be recognized by the chair when we speak, so let's try not to interrupt each other. I'm certainly guilty of it, but let's try not to. Anybody else have anything they want to bring up at this time? Nobody? Okay.
I'll go ahead since you pressed me a little bit there. One of the things I've been thinking of, and I think I've mentioned it to you on a sidebar, I'd like for other people to be thinking about this on the commission, is that we have people coming in and speaking to us, and I don't think we have any way of offering a thank you note to them. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't be thanking folks for taking their time to come and inform us. So that's just something I want to kind of get out there, let y'all be thinking about it. You know, I haven't even asked the staff what it would take to implement something like that, but if I have to take time and energy to do it myself, I would be willing to give it a try. And it's one of those kind of things, if we did try it and it worked out good, we could continue, but if we tried it and it didn't work so well, or if there were problems with it for something, we could certainly stop.
We do have a little thank you note that I created back 2 years ago when I came into this office. And we did do it for a little brief period of time, but we just got away from it.
Okay. Well, me being new, I don't have the history, so thank you. Maybe we could look into re-implementing that. And if I need to be involved, because I know you're pressed for time, I'll be glad to give it a try and see if we can, you know, even if we just hit and miss on this, it's gonna make a difference, you know, to let people know that.
Once we get a
Appreciate it.
full department,
Right. But
Might be a
if you
little-
need my help in the meantime, I'd be glad to.
appreciate that. But yeah, we do have they're just little note cards, so.
Great. Thank you.
Anybody else got anything? Pat?
I'd just like to thank all y'all guys for coming to these things. I've attended numerous board meetings along with the commissioner, or our chairman, and, you know, I'm an extremely busy person, but I'm like y'all, I stop and, you know, if I'm committed to something, I'm committed. Now, I appreciate all y'all guys showing up every meeting. So I just want to put that out there, because I know how hard it is for us to do all these things, and I'm like Mr. Hobby, as soon as we get done here, I'm running to another meeting. So I appreciate y'all's dedication.
Anybody else got anything? Staff comments?
I did just a little bit of research over the past 3 months with Adam not being here, and I just grabbed the wrong thing. So over the past 3 months, the plat approvals that we have done is 171. The zoning and flood reviews, which is the new constructions, the site plans, which are, you know, not just residential, commercial, additions, things like that, it's been 287. Compared to last year, when Adam was in the office, the plat approvals were 116 and site plans were 164. And just to go back a year prior, back in 2019, the very first month I wasn't in the office, but the other 2 months I was, so that we had 3 planners in 2019. So the plat approvals were 38 and the new construction site plans were 247. So I've been busy. I'm
Yes, you
tired.
have.
But the department is moving along nicely, but I am tired. Code enforcement cases, we have 78 open ones right now. Those basically stopped when we lost our code enforcement officer. But we have one possibly coming on. I have offered the position. And we'll see what happens tomorrow night with the budget to see if we get another one. So, and I don't know where we are with the planning director. I haven't spoken to Ms. Brock in about a week.
This really is phenomenal what they're doing back there. And since Adam has left and the growth that we have seen in the county and whatever, this really is something. And then they're out here taking care of the minutes and doing it for this commission and for another group for BZA and whatever. And there's a lot of activity back there. There really is. I really appreciate it. I really do. And I'm sure everybody up here does too. Okay,
Mr. Chair, can I ask you a question?
I hope so.
Explain code enforcement cases.
I do the zoning part of it, so Laura can probably explain the code enforcement part of it better, because she's more of the administrative assistant on that part. So feel free.
And when you say explain, like what one is that what you're?
Is that somebody that's violating the building code and?
No,
Oh,
it's-
okay.
Code enforcement is really has to do with the IPMC, which is the International Property Maintenance Code, which the county adopted and the Code Enforcement Office enforces. And so these are people calling in saying, the person next to me or the person down the road has 8 million bags of trash in the yard, or there's rodents in their yard, and so now they're moving to my yard, or there's unregistered vehicles, or someone's living in a home that the roof is caving in, and I'm worried that they're living in something that they shouldn't be in.
Okay.
So it's those types of violations. We also get the ones when people call about zoning, like there's water running into Lake Kiwi and I don't see a silt fence anywhere. They go to Vivian first, and then when there is a code enforcement officer, they go out. But since there's not one, Vivian's been doing those. So, but the 78 really deal with the IPMC, which is the property maintenance codes.
I tell you, Pat, I asked if I could, when another code enforcement officer was here, I asked if I could go and ride with him for a day or two, and unfortunately it was declined. But I've seen some photographs of drug abuse where, the evidence of it there, and just unsafe conditions that people are living in. It is really quite something that's going on out there that we aren't really seeing day to day. David?
I have a question on the code enforcement. Do you guys have an idea of what percentage of the enforcement items are reported by the public versus which ones are identified by the officer?
Yeah, I actually, I don't have the exact numbers, but I pulled those out. And I would say out of the 78 that we have right now, there's probably 15 that were reported by law enforcement. The rest are from the public.
Law enforcement, not code enforcement?
No, law enforcement sometimes.
They are code enforcement.
No, they go, let's say they're going out, like, one of the bigger ones is they have a call, like somebody calls and says there's a disturbance. Then they'll go out and they'll see property maintenance issues, and then they'll bring us in. It could be someone from animal control that's going out, and they'll see, some property maintenance issues too, and then they'll report. So about 15 of the 78 were probably initiated by law enforcement. The
Okay.
other are just the public.
Okay, so right now, the reason we don't have any of that percentage attributable to the code enforcement officer is because we don't have one. Is that
The code
correct?
enforcement officer doesn't go out looking for
They don't,
things.
okay, they don't go out looking.
It's a complaint-driven office. We can't do anything if somebody doesn't complain. So and not only just complain, like they can call, but they have to fill out a form and they have to sign it.
Okay,
We don't know-
so this second code enforcement officer that we are proposing to add to the budget for this year, what's their function? Are they going to be in the office, or are they going to be out seeking? Are they
No.
going to be that one that's going to ramp up the number of
It's,
identified
It's logistics.
issues?
This county is so large that it's just too large for one person.
yeah,
Right, but the code enforcement officer that you are going to get back, which you, I guess, didn't have, is that person out in the field identifying code issues, or are they in the office?
No, our code, Laura does the basics, online stuff, the administrative part of it. And the two code enforcement officers will just be out, following up on the complaints.
So they don't actually identify anything, they just follow up on
No, sir.
public
I mean,
complaints?
no, it is, we are complaint driven. We have to have a complaint form from someone, to send our officer out.
Right.
They don't go out looking for
They,
problems.
yeah.
That would be
they do
somebody
not-
knocking on every door in every neighborhood, which would just be logistically impossible.
I know Mr. Chair, one more time, I know we're getting off but this is very interesting. So the code enforcement officer has the authority to, how does that go from there? Does he say, hey, you gotta fix this, you gotta take it down? Or does it go to the county? Where does it go? What's the trail to enforce what the code enforcement officer has found?
It's the IPMC is what drives the code enforcement officer. If there's something in that International Property Maintenance Code book, it's usually a safety issue. Most of the times it's safety, and he can go out and he can placard it as unsafe for human habitation. It's usually that type of thing.
So there's legs behind it. I mean, there's somebody standing behind this guy. Once he identifies an unsafe or condition,
Right, they're asked to, to fix it up, and if not, we can take them to the magistrate.
Am I correct that if you used the example of no silt fence up? Am I correct in saying that if a neighbor complains that dirt is flowing into one of the lakes because the silt fence is down, that code enforcement officer can literally shut down that build permit process until that is fixed? So there is real teeth to it once,
That's
in
for
some
zoning,
areas.
that's zoning,
Yeah.
so I can do that. I can pull the building permit for that. That's zoning,
They're two
it's
different.
it's planning and zoning and it's code enforcement. It's both under the same planning director.
So some of it you're able to handle, I mean, it doesn't show up as one of these 78
If it's
items.
zoning, I can do it. If it's IPMC, I can't. You have to be commissioned by council and Ms. Brock.
Anybody else got any questions about that?
Just a little bit more. So, trying to understand, so the code enforcement officer's function is to process existing allegations, not to originate new allegations?
That's correct.
And with one code enforcement officer, y'all would find yourselves irreparably behind on processing allegations? Is that the
Very much
basis
so.
for trying to get a second code
Very much
enforcement
so,
officer?
Yes, because the county is so large. Yes, absolutely.
And each one is really time intensive. I mean, it's not just going on, meeting with someone and saying, okay, this is what's wrong, you have to fix it. A lot of times they don't have the means to fix it, so it's finding solutions, giving them the time to fix it. So it's not just one phone call or one visit and it's done, and now you can check that off the list. We have some that are open since 2019 that we're still working on.
And it's just the
So
customer service part of it.
you guys are telling me you've got a bow wave of allegations that are not being processed and won't be even if you only get one code enforcement officer?
He's just
Tell me
gonna
you'll
be busy.
continue to have
He or
a bow
she-
wave?
He or she will just be very busy, like Mr. Stevens was.
Understand. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to make a comment, is one of the things that I've heard is it's not easy to continue to keep that person employed. And so by having two code enforcement officers, you would hopefully, one would be on staff if one were to leave. So therefore, right now, we don't have any. If we had two, we might have one. You see what I'm saying? I'm talking to you, David, I'm sorry. But that's what I wanted to build a case for. It seems like a very smart thing to do if you have turnover in a position, to have more than one. Especially,
Understand.
there's a training factor.
I think there's a balance in, maintaining.
Thank you. That's all I had to say.
Anybody else got anything? All right, let's go on to the Agriculture Advisory Board meeting. Pat and I went, and I'm glad we went. We opened up dialogue with that group, and they were very appreciative that we came forward to them and I want to continue that dialogue with them. Also want to reach out to the tourism group also in the future. We talked about a lot of different ideas and thoughts about protecting agriculture land in the future. And Pat had some ideas, they had some ideas, and hopefully they will try to come forward with some that will be doable, that will be achievable and obtainable. Pat, you want to take it from there?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm surprised how many people watch this, because since the last meeting, my constituency has grown. Not only from the agricultural, I was basically representing cattlemen, row croppers, just landowners. But now I got forestry people that, hey, I want to jump on that bandwagon. Just nature lovers, I want to jump on that bandwagon. So there is a great concern, as I was letting the Agricultural Advisory Committee know, that we're losing land at a tremendous rate. 200, 300, 400 acres don't sound like a whole lot, but when you do that 2 or 3, 4 times a week, it gets quick. So the support is from the community, is the groundswell is growing, but we don't have a plan. A lot of people's got a lot of ideas, a lot of suggestions. Do this, do that, and I tell them, well, it's not that simple. We got to approach committees, we got to fine tune them. The biggest thing I see, guys, is just education. There's a lot of folks out there thinking, hey, I can get $10,000 for my land, but they don't think about tax implications. They don't think about inheritance, capital gains. I've had some people say, hey, I sold my land for $500,000, but I had $300,000 of taxes. That's kind of a roundabout way for me to say, well, that's a way to get around this sell-off that we're facing right now. You got to realize what you got to pay. And so it's kind of one of them backdoor moves, kind of. So I'm getting with Mr. Blanton soon, who's on the Agriculture Advisory Board. He was very, very interested. He and I have had conversations before and some dialogue. I'd really like to know the feeling of the rest of that board. There was only 3 members present. So just still gaining information, gaining suggestions, but we really need a good concrete idea to how to approach county council with a proposal of some kind of trade-off. If they purchase another large tract of land, how about let's purchase another one and keep it in some kind of conservation, some kind of easement. There's a lot of dissension about easements, and a lot of people, I want to protect my land, but I don't want it to be completely tied down to where I can't do anything. So I think there's some flexibility there that can be found, some common ground. And like I say, there's a lot of people watching us, or will watch us, and I'm proud of that, because I want to make sure that my time is well spent. Mr. Chair, I didn't know if your general feeling of the meeting with them the other day, I mean, did you?
Well, I thought it was very positive. I was very, very encouraged by it, and I think that work closely together, we can come up with a couple of suggestions or ideas that we can formulate and then carry forward. It's not going to be done in a week or two, but there are some ideas out there, and you've had some good ideas.
Well, what I need my ideas need to be somehow formed into a plan and a presentation, and I'll need somebody to help me to do that. But we have tremendous support, and I believe it's something that'll go somewhere that won't lose steam real quick like a lot of other ideas are.
Mr. Nix had a question, and then I've got a follow-up or a question too.
I'm not going to go there.
Well, I will, as to, or go somewhere with it. I would like you to keep an ear to the ground. When I first got on this commission, which I think was 5 or 6 years ago now, there was already 2 or 3 years in the works of zoning. And it was a voluntary, if you want to protect yourself and jump in, here's a way to do it. And we created an ordinance that allowed for farmers to protect the land in the future in a way that could be undone. like you said, where you put something in a conservancy and it's over. It's done, you don't come back out of that. But if you put something under a zoning of, say, 1 home per 5 acres, it prevents the developer from knocking on your door a little bit. But the grandkids, when they finally take over that farm, if they don't want to farm, somebody could go in front of a BZA and get relief based on development that's happening around. So it is a way out versus a conservancy. And so we thought it was a great idea, and then all of a sudden it kind of blew up. And I'm sure there was politics behind why it blew up, but I don't know what those were. I think that people were afraid of, oh, you're zoning these people. What we kept hearing, and we're going, no, that really is, if you want in on this, here's the way you could do it.
Well, I've hit on education a lot of times, and that's what it boils down to, because people hear the Z word and they're done. They're closed you out. So I'm pretty good at keep picking on people. Listen to me. Just listen to me. You know, so if we continue to educate our landowners, I think we can move somewhere with it. But we got to be gentle, and a lot of times you got to leave some things at the door to get in. And but education, I feel like education on all the strategies I'm talking about is going to be paramount before we move on.
Can you go to the next page, Vivian, please?
This one?
Go down, yes, go down to number 3 there and look at it, if you will. First of all, Pat and I talked on the phone, and I'm going to delegate the responsibility for the whole ag effort to Pat and let him keep us up to date on it. I think that the idea of protecting agriculture land, we need to move that over into our open items list. Remember, we talked about a couple of issues. One of them was junkyards and the other one was impact fees. I would like to move this over into that category. And Pat agreed this morning to take that little mantle on and keep us working in that direction to protect agriculture land. But if you look down at the review, that's under number 3, it talks about screening, zoning, and there was a time when we had a concept of an Ag 5 and Ag 50 zoning. It was brought before the county council and didn't pass at that time. Urban growth boundaries, is anybody familiar with those? I am somewhat. And that's where you more or less, I can see Tom is a fan of them, you more or less draw a line around the urban area, and then everything outside of that is agriculture. It's been tried and been done in a couple areas. But in anyway, we also have down here consult the Ag Board, which we're in the process of doing. So there are a lot of different ideas and concepts in any case. Anybody else have anything?
Well, I got
Dave.
I'm sorry, Dave, go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment. I said I wasn't going to go there, and Mr. Mike Johnson went there, so I'm going to go there too. The lesser of two evils is some kind of zoning versus a conservation easement. Conservation easements, it's the end. You put your land in a conservation, and the public needs to understand that. You put your land in a conservation easement, it is not undoable, not for generations. Whereas zoning can be undone by legislation. And I know people hate zoning. I hate zoning. But they need to understand that zoning is the lesser of two evils to protect agricultural areas.
The nice, if I may, the nice thing about zoning is, coming from a real estate brokerage standpoint, is the real estate agent can, if he's going to a developer, he can see that this land next door is agriculture. This land on the other side is agriculture. And it puts the onus on the developer to say, hey, if they've got cows and the wind's blowing north, it's on you. And as a real estate agent, we're responsible for letting them know there are cows next door.
Right, and the thing about
without doing anything about it.
Yes, and the thing about this kind of zoning is, we always argue that zoning takes away rights, but what it does is it gives somebody some rights at the expense of the others. So it puts the onus on on the developer versus the farmer.
Correct. And that
have
farmer
to think about
having
that.
one vote in front of some council member is equal to the new development with 270 new homes. That farmer has as much right because they have been protected under this category, whatever protections we claim them to have as an ordinance.
And I can tell you, in this county, the only way you're gonna sell that point is, it's the lesser of two evils if we want to protect ag.
Okay,
Thank you.
anybody else got anything about ag? Well, it looks like at this point then, we are down to the strategies review. And if everyone would turn to page 1, what I'd like to do is to continue with this. Let's remember that a review is an assessment, and the comp plan is not written just for the Planning Commission's area of responsibility. And we have to keep in mind what's achievable and obtainable. So what I'd like to do is look at item 3. It's on page 1, protect ag land. I would like to check that off and say that we have reviewed that with a caveat that Pat is going to keep us up to speed on anything that the Ag Advisory Group and the Planning Commission work together to move forward to protect agriculture land. Is there any kind of problem with checking that off as being reviewed?
Have we protected agriculture land, or have we just said we're going to take it to the next, just hear about it?
We're going to see what the Ag Advisory Group can come up with and what Pat can come up with and we can come up with together.
I
Yes,
think the
Gary.
point is trying to say that we have reviewed it. And
Yeah, it's
and
it.
so, yeah, it doesn't mean actions are taken, but we have reviewed it. And thanks to Pat, we're going to continue to review and hopefully move forward with some recommendations.
Everybody all right with that, comfortable with it? Down here on the left, everybody all right? Okay, turn the page over. And we have number 5, road maintenance planning. We have just talked to the CAT bus rep, and we have Kyle coming in to talk to us. And he'll talk to us about exit 4 and sidewalks. And sidewalks was part of the road maintenance planning. So I think it would be prudent that we just wait until Kyle talks to us, and we'll just leave that an open item. At this point, we're coming down to some of the other individual strategies. And remember, the first 5 we had selected as a priority. And I had come up with this category system for reviewing these. And you have that page there. I didn't hear from anybody about whether or not they were objecting to it or they had a better plan. So what I'd like to do is see if we can accept that as the method for reviewing the 2021 strategies. And I was going to, go ahead.
I'd like to move to accept the categories as listed here, and we approve it as such.
Is there a second to that?
Can I
I'll
comment?
second. You
Can
can
I
second
comment?
it?
Fill me in where we are. Where, Mr. Golden, where we,
Can you roll back, Vivian? There, right. One more page back, please. There. That's where we're at.
I must be
So,
missing that
so
page.
just for clarification, do you mind if I speak for a second? These categories have been listed
That's why I
to
don't
help
see
in
it.
the review process. So if we don't have categories, it's hard to know from time to time when you revisit the strategies as to which one are priorities and which ones have already been reviewed and that kind of thing. So by going with approval of the categories, as the chair had asked, then we would then be approving how to review the strategic
Strategy.
strategies.
Anyone want
Somebody
to,
seconded it?
you second it?
Has somebody seconded it?
Nobody has.
So I'll second it so we can discuss.
All right, let's have a formal discussion about it. We're just talking about the concept of using the categories. Any discussion?
Yep.
Yep.
So I'm looking through here, and it's taken a while for me to get my head around this. You know, we've started with several different ways of saying, okay, here's a list, and here, you know, we've got several different lists of how are we gonna go about eating this elephant. This is another one of those. It looks, and tell me if correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm still trying to get my head around it. I see a lot of category 3 through 5, but nothing in 1 and 2. And 1 and 2 would be direct actions from us. 3 through 5 would be actions that are either delegated or we're simply getting reports from other entities. Am I correct in that understanding?
You are. Now, remember that the first 5, we had filtered out several meetings ago. And we said, these were our priorities. And I would say that was in February, in that area. So those are really the high priority items of the 37 strategies that we're supposed to review. I went ahead and took the initiative and put all this together for the next 6 pages. And I went ahead and created the categories in light of nothing else.
Well, and so I guess what I'm getting at is, it looks like there's a lot of things that we simply are looking at to check off, which was something that we talked about at the first of the year, of let's look at the items that we can simply hear from some other committee, see if there's something that we can involve ourselves in, other than letting them have a public forum to speak, and then we can check that off as completed. And it looks like here, since there's a lot of category 3 through 5s, that we're continuing that process as opposed to biting off something that we actually, a category 1 or 2, which I would enjoy seeing some more 1s and 2s in here maybe, but if I'm understanding
Okay,
this
so
correctly.
I think this all seems like, for clarification's sake, this is what the motion is on, is to whether or not to use the categories that have been presented by the chair. Okay, how we go about using them is not part of the motion, okay? But I do want to clarify, numbers 1 through 5 would be categories 1, because we're actively addressing those already. It hasn't been listed that way, which I asked Chairman Smith to include those, and I think he will in the future.
So let me make sure, so we're simply talking about this page if a category action is something that we want to do, and not all of the ones that
Right.
you've
No.
addressed here.
No,
That was
I
Gotcha.
sat down and put those together myself.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that they're correct or not. I put in the verbiage for the review also. I felt otherwise we would just wander and we wouldn't have any way of having a process. And that's what I wanted, was some kind of process. We got 37 of these to do, and we got 60-some of them annually. Gary?
Okay, well, let me defer to David. He had his hand up first,
Oh,
but I would
I'm
like to
sorry.
say something else.
I'd like to direct everybody's attention to page 6, bottom, category, it's a category 5 item, expand sewer service throughout areas identified by land use element. There's been a lot of discussion on this one about, and I'm sure you guys have heard some of it in the county council meetings. So right now, I think the county is faced with a choice. The choice is, do we try to be independent from the Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority and maybe build something in the southern part of the county, in the lower area, something similar to Conner Ross Treatment Plant, and separate ourselves from the municipalities? Or do we extend the line and be part of the OJSRA, which right now we have no representation on? I think that's a very important planning issue, and I think it needs to be in our top 4 or 5.
If I can, I'd like to get back to what we were talking about of it. Is this a process that we want to work with using this category concept? When we work down there, then if we
Understand,
want
we're
to move it
voting
up
on
to
the
number 1.
process and not the items.
Yeah, this is just accept, that's all I want to do, is just
Took me a
see.
bit to get there, but thank you, guys.
No,
that's
I was
all
the
right.
same way. That was kind of where I was struggling with. Are we talking about these as we've got them categorized?
So we're not voting on what we pick as priorities. We're
No.
voting on, we got a list and we got a priorities, and then we're gonna pick once we
We're gonna
establish
work
this
our
as
way
a
down.
process.
Yes.
Understand.
The thing I wanted to mention is that at some point, we need to say we've reviewed all these. By having structure with categories, not only helps us keep organized with it, but at some point, we can say, we've reviewed all this. And I think that's very important for us to be able to say.
Can we read the motion one more time? before we vote?
He made the motion. Do you
Okay,
have the
I
motion?
can repeat. Okay, I move that we accept the categories as our chair has presented them.
Period. And
The
Mike,
category identification 1 through 5, not these categories as presented.
just
Right.
what you have on that page.
Yep.
Can
Okay,
you second that?
and I'll second that.
Any more discussion? David, Pat, Frankie? Well, let's call this to a vote then. All those in favor of accepting this category as presented as a concept, let's raise one hand. 1, 2. Okay, that's 5, 6 votes. It passes. All right, now, David, what I was going to do was this, just turn to page 2. In road maintenance planning is, we're going to leave that one open. We're going to wait until we hear from Kyle Reed to talk to us. We've already had the cat bus rep. Now, let's look at 3113, the next one down.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. So we just agreed that the page with the list of categories is how we're gonna classify stuff.
Yes,
So these first 5 items, they're not categorized. What are they? Are they category ones?
they're going to be category 1. I just haven't, revised it. That's what I think we all agreed, that they were the ones that we initially accepted in February as priority items. So they would be category 1, all of them, 1 through 5. And that's why I numbered them like that, was because we had identified them back in February as priority items. I just haven't gotten around to putting category 1 next to them. So they will be category 1. So again, on page 2, 3113, it reviewed land use plans, et cetera, relevant policies and proposed residential developments to ensure compatibility, et cetera, et cetera. And in my review, I just said, see number 3 above, which is protect ag land. And we have something in the works called development standards. And again, you go back to zoning, revise the zoning ordinance to include Ag 550, et cetera, et cetera. Does anybody want to jump in on that discussion? Do we categorize that as being reviewed?
I got a question. How is that one different from number 3?
Well, that's what, since we have worked over number 3 and we have put Pat in charge of keeping us up to date with protecting ag land, it seems to me that it falls under that category on page 1, item number 3. So to me, that's why I put it as category 5. In other words, it's already been being addressed. That was 3 o'clock in the morning, so I'm not real sharp at that
I
time.
think that's where the rub was coming for me, was I don't know that we're using I like the category idea, I don't know that we're using them correctly, because to me, we've got a committee that's reporting to us about future actions that we might need to take. To me, that's a number 3, not a number 5, that it's been addressed. That we're still waiting for ag to say, hey, we need y'all to do this step. And then we can actually do that step, whatever that step might be.
Well, if you want to change it to category 3, we can sure do it with a stroke of a pencil. That's no problem. Again, I go back to the idea that this whole concept, that whole issue is under page 1, number 3. And I think we're in agreement with that. I mean, I don't have a problem changing that to category 3. Is that all right? If we say we're changing it to category 3 and we're reviewing it, and it is included on page 1 under item 3. Is everybody all right with that? You okay? Pat, I know you gotta go, so when you gotta leave.
Just a few minutes. I do have one question. So, for my future reference, if I have action that I need to take on category 3, how do I get that on the agenda? Do I just,
Just email me,
okay.
call me on the phone.
So next meeting, if I have a swell idea, I say I want to talk about action 3 or category 3
Call me sometime after 3:30
in the morning or
in the
afternoon?
morning. Okay?
Thank you.
No problem. Let's go down to 3214. Work with the state and other organizations to identify and secure funding for housing and neighborhood rehab for declining and unsafe residential areas through the public, nonprofit, private sectors. I read a business publication and read the review. There's funding in the COVID-19 bill for a lot of money for retrofitting and building affordable housings. How much and when will it reach Oconee? Who knows? But the money is out there for rehabbing, and gosh knows what this infrastructure bill that Congress is working on now is going to provide. Does anybody have any discussion they want to bring up on that? Well,
Do we have a list, either by staff or by this committee, of all the grant writing groups out there that,
this, if I'm not mistaken, the county has a grant writer.
Yes.
Would you help us out with that, Vivian?
Okay.
You would tell
maybe
us that
from
we
our
have a,
department would be just, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. Our department would just say, hey, if there's a grant writer, please be aware that, look into
I
this
actually,
COVID-19 bill.
here I am over talking you again, I'm sorry. I contacted Amanda about this, and I said, Amanda, there's this X number of money out there for rehab. Where is the county on this? And she came back to me and said that, they're working through the process. It would come down to the state first, and then the state would allocate it to the various counties and whatever. But the county does have a grant writer. She's a full-time position from what I understand.
Yes.
So there is activity and they're knowledgeable that these funds are out there. The difficulty is working through the process to get the funds. So is everybody all right with saying that 3214 has been reviewed?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to check that off. 4325, identify projects that promote opportunity zone incentive areas. Opportunity zones are economically depressed areas, and from what I understand, we have maybe 1 or 2 here. Do you know for fact, Vivian, which ones we have? I think the Utica Mill site.
Utica Mill.
Utica Mill is the one that we continually hear about.
Yeah, the Nori Mill.
Well, I called the Oconee Economic Alliance. I talked to Annie and I said, is there any activity towards that Utica Mill site? And she said that there was 2 groups that were doing their due diligence. And she, of course, is not going to tell me the names of them, how far along they are. But this is really an area that falls under her purview of trying to work with opportunity zones. So that's why I kind of left it as a category 3. But we have to depend on the Oconee Economic Alliance to work in that area. I think that's, I guess to coin a phrase, that's above our pay grade. So I'm going to check that off. If you want to go to the next page, page 3, how about, let's see if we can get through 2 more and then maybe we'll call a decrease on this. 5112, decrease littering. had several comments at the community meetings about the decreasing, the litter problem. And this read, enhance the visual and aesthetic character of the county, et cetera, et cetera. A litter control ordinance was recently revised, and it was 2021-09, and the county has posted a job offering for a code enforcement officer. So, there you have it. David?
So we just discussed the fact that the code enforcement officer wouldn't be identifying these issues. Is that correct?
That's
So how
right.
does that address that issue?
When the neighbor complains,
The
they
neighbor-
go out. Everything is driven by the community.
He's not gonna go along the road and follow along behind a truck and say you're, losing litter, et cetera. It's when the neighbor calls up or somebody files a complaint, puts their name on it, signs it. So if everybody's okay, I'm gonna go ahead and check that one as being reviewed.
Mr. Chair, I need to be excused, please. I need to go.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry,
Let's
guys.
keep in touch.
I got my bucket is running over with committees.
Let's do one more, and then if it's okay with everybody, I think we'll call a halt at this point. 5121, promote the ongoing improvement and maintenance of property condition and appearance of historic structures and districts. Boy. Now, again, there's this ordinance 2021-11 at the second reading that addresses this. I don't want to put you on the spot, but are you familiar with that?
I'm not.
Okay. Do you know about it, David?
Yes, sir.
Can you help us with it?
Okay, I believe it's the ordinance that imposes penalties if people are caught damaging historic structures or monuments.
I think you're right,
I
yeah.
think that's the gist of it.
I think it's been passed.
I think it has too. I think it passed the third reading
Yeah.
last county council meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you're right. Yeah. So I would consider that one, 5121, is being reviewed. Let's do the next one, and then we'll see if anybody wants to adjourn. 5124 is explore the purchase and adaptive reuse of the Utica Mill site. I just went over that one and mentioned to you what Annie had said to me about it, that there were some people that were doing their due diligence on that area with the hope that it will fall into the opportunity zone incentive category. Has anybody got any problem with saying that's reviewed? Is anybody interested in adjourning at this point, or you want to keep going? Tell me what you want to do.
I'll make a move that we adjourn.
Okay. All those in favor of adjourning? That's unanimous.